Oh, hello, good morning, and welcome. Very glad to see all of you here. We have almost a full house here. For those of you who don't know, I'm Don Krupp, and I'm your Clackamas County Administrator, and I want to welcome you all to a celebration of the 175th anniversary of Clackamas County. Hey. Of course, we're here because it was back in 1843 that the Clackamas District was created by the state's provisional legislature. The district was actually one of 4 such districts at the time, along with Champoeg, which was later renamed Marion, and then Tuolity, which was later renamed Washington, and Yamhill. So I want to share with you just real quickly what we're going to do today. We're going to invite a gentleman, Patrick Harris, up to give us a local history lesson in a little bit. He is the executive director of the Aurora Colony Historical Society and the former executive director of the Clackamas County Historical Society. Then we're going to hear from some former Clackamas County commissioners, all of whom have played vital roles in helping to shape Clackamas County into this beautiful place that it is today. We're going to then invite one of my favorite people, former Oregon City Mayor Doug Neely, who's actually going to treat us to a presentation as Dr. John McLaughlin. And we're going to then hear from our 5 current county commissioners talk about their proudest accomplishments so far. And then finally, we have a special surprise for you at the end, a special unveiling. And then we'll all have time to enjoy refreshments. And I'm happy to see we have chocolate cake too here. So I'm looking forward to a big piece of that, a corner piece. So one word of note. Originally we were going to be presenting the contents and lowering time capsule today. And we've postponed that to probably in November, and we'll let you know the date on that just because we had some logistical reasons, but we want to make sure you know we're going to be doing that and looking forward to having you join us for that too. Additionally, you should know that we also invited the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, but they were not able to appear today due to scheduling conflicts. But it is important for us to note how vital the tribes are to the history and the present and the future of Clackamas County. And with that, I want to get started. So I want to first welcome Patrick Harris. Again, he's the executive director of the Aurora Colony Historical Society. Please join me in welcoming him here today.
Very nice. I thought you were going to say you were going to delay it to the 200th anniversary, but can't wait till then. This is a very august group here. It was just the 150th, wasn't it? Yes. The survivors of all of those years that we all worked together. So it is a good day, and it belongs to the pioneers. So began the ceremony celebrating the second reunion of the Oregon Pioneers Association, held at the Aurora Colony Park on June 11, 1874. Nearly 1,500 Oregon Trail pioneers with family and friends, and many of whom had settled in Clackamas County, were treated to patriotic speeches, a performance by the Aurora Colony Brass Band, and then a sumptuous sausage and ham dinner prepared by the colonists themselves. What significant event was the main topic of this 1874 meeting? Anybody want to guess at that one? Declaration of Independence? No. That was certainly, it would have been on the agenda later during the meeting, I'm sure. Well, it was the 1846 treaty between the United States and England, in which the British left the territories and moved to Canada. It was a big deal, transferring the Oregon country below the 49th parallel, with the exception of Vancouver Island, to American control. Mine is kind of an impressionistic history of my role as well here in Clackamas County. It starts really in the summer of 1970 when North Catholic High School burns down. I was going to be a junior. I was a city kid raised near the University of Portland. Honest to God, it never would have occurred to me to come to Oregon City or Clackamas County at the time. And I think that still is unfortunately some of the case with the people who live in Portland. But some of my friends wanted to go to a school with both boys and girls, and I was dating a gal at the time who was especially interested in that. And of course, what are you going to do? You're going to go, right? And so we rode the bus to LaSalle into Clackamas County then, my junior year, and then we carpooled my senior year. And my vivid memory of that is the bomber at Oak Grove, you know, and then coming at that crest just down there by Office Depot as you're heading down towards Gladstone, that view of the foothills of the Cascades. So dramatic when the light is just right. McLaughlin Boulevard, and 30 years later, in about the year 2000, I learned from Art Lacey, and we all know who he was, that why they called it the superhighway. And some of you are old enough to remember, older than I am even. And I said, Art, why do they call it the superhighway? And he said, well, they put a light in Portland and a light in Oregon City, and the kids drove like hell in between. I was a history major. I was interested, however, in Greece and Rome rather than Oregon City and Clackamas County. But in graduate school, I needed a job, and my former boss at Farrell's, I worked at Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor restaurant when I was younger, was Rick Harris. And Rick Harris opened Harry's Mustache on Main Street in Oregon City. On what I learned when I got there was the original site of the First Methodist Church west of the Rocky Mountains. Very interesting. I didn't have a car at that point, so I rode the bus back and forth. I later, just a short time after that, while in graduate school, I got an internship at Aurora, and I rode the Greyhound bus out there and back 3 days a week. It was the situation where I remember a fellow on the bus sitting next to me says, is this the bus that stops in all the little places like Aurora? And I said, well, yeah, yes, it is, and that's where I'm going. So I secure the master's, and after a year or two of wandering about, hoping for the job, I do get hired at Aurora. I always tell young people about internships and the significance of that and getting yourself known. There were about 50 applications for that job, but they knew who I was, and they hired me. Significant deal. And so I began to explore and come to appreciate this Dr. William Kyle, this German patriarch, communal society leader. He was a tailor, a druggist, and he organized a Christian communal society in Missouri in 1844 and 1845. Now, 1844, some of you will remember, at least in your history lessons, was 7 years after the Great Panic of 1837, and everybody was preaching, a lot of the preachers were preaching the end of the world and the second coming of Jesus. So communal societies make sense in that sort of a situation. Kyle tells the ministers of the Methodist Church that he joins that they should get paid because Jesus hadn't been paid, and of course they told him, well, you can certainly believe that, but not with the Methodists. Another good reason to form a communal society, right, where you now need you yourself need a job and get everybody's assets put back into a central treasury that you can use. So anyway, he was a German immigrant, so how much did he know about America? He came in 1836. Did he know that on August 21st, 1803, the United States Senate ratified the Louisiana Purchase? Did you know that French Canadians had been trapping furs in the Great Lakes and the Mississippi, upper Mississippi, for 2 centuries? That Lewis and Clark had brought back the news that Jefferson wanted to hear? That the West was a vast wilderness ripe for exploration and political development and American settlement? Oh, and that John Jacob Astor was aware of this already, and in 1811 he sponsored a seagoing and overland trip to what became known as Astoria. 140 people participated in this, and 60 of them died. In the age-old tradition, young men flinging themselves at the wilderness, writes Peter Stark in his new book, Astoria, a wonderful book, by the way, measuring themselves against the wilderness, yet on the Pacific coast lay a wilderness of unimaginable size and power and remoteness. Robert Stewart, a local writer, or a writer, has written about this. He will be taught, this explorer, the pleasure and the advantage of prayer. What seemed at first, however, sheer folly and catastrophe, in all their wrong turns and sufferings and dead ends, they happened to discover the best way to cross the last third of the continent, what would become the Oregon Trail. Now, the British, of course, couldn't get over the loss of the colonies. That went on, and they still saw opportunities for political influence and business. Of course, there's the War of 1812. That kind of takes the starch for a while out of Astor's ideas. But in 1818, the Joint Occupancy Treaty between the United States and England allows for a central, we're not going to bother you people if you don't bother us too much as far as the settlement of the West goes. And so what begins is that Americans, mostly Methodists and Catholics who are concerned about the Indians and saving their souls, who are already, most of them already perished, of course, from the diseases brought out here before that. They set up their missions in this lush area, this lush valley that few of them understood had been burned back for 10,000 years by the Indians, and that's why they had a park-like setting as opposed to the great wilderness that they encountered coming through the gorge and over the Oregon Trail. So Americans and French Canadians. French Canadians are working for McLaughlin at Fort Vancouver as his primary fur trappers, and they know, how to do all that. And then they don't want to go back to Canada. They want to settle because it's a lush prairie. And some of the Americans are there side by side. And I like to say that at Champoeg, 49 Americans came up with 52 votes in good old American diplomatic tradition and formed a provisional government, not sanctioned by Congress, but certainly sympathized with by most of the people in Congress. Oregon City is the capital, of course, the 4 political districts that you mentioned already. And it leads to that treaty of 1846, which the British decide to leave. 1847 is a great rush then across the Oregon Trail, and most significantly it is Henderson Llewellyn and John Walker Grimm and Mr. Gear who are bringing fruit seeds and fruit starts to this lush wilderness, this lush area, and they are now beginning to plant orchards of apples and pears in the Willamette Valley. In 1848, then a year later, ship comes into the Willamette. Oh, they've discovered gold in California. These guys are there. They're already here. I call them the 48ers, actually. And they go overland, and a significant number of them get a good amount of gold, and they come back and they invest it in the development of mills and transportation systems. And you're all familiar with Lot Whitcomb and his steamship that was launched, steamboat, I should say, which was launched on Christmas Day of 1850 at Milwaukee. So where's Kyle in all this? Well, in 1853, Washington becomes a territory, okay? Grant, not General Grant, but Grant is at Fort Vancouver because the Americans have taken over Fort Vancouver. And Kyle sends scouts out west, 10 of them. Some of you have heard of Emma Wagner Gacy, married to Christian Gacy. She's the subject of 3 novels by Jane Kirkpatrick, which has made our museum kind of a shrine in a way for the people that have read the books. They go to Willapa Bay because that's where they were directed, according to the story. And they like it. Apparently it's in October, much like this October. What a deal. And they send word back, and Kyle begins the preparation to bring his first group across the Oregon Trail. His 19-year-old son, Willie, is going to lead the wagon train. Willie comes down with a fever and dies, but he'd been promised, and he gets a special lead-lined casket filled with the Golden Rule whiskey that they made, and he comes across the Oregon Trail, unmolested by Indians, which, of course, most of the people were. They forget to mention that, but most of them were. Unless you really irritated them, they usually didn't bother you. Not always, though. Anyway, Kyle comes to Willapa, and it's raining, which, of course, it usually does in October and November, and it continues to rain, and he can't believe they picked this place. Why would you pick this place? It is so far from markets. It's so isolated. Well, okay, so he rejects that. He has to bury Willie, though. I asked a tinsmith about that one time in Aurora, back when we were celebrating the 150th anniversary, when we actually brought Willie, not really, but we brought a mannequin across the Oregon Trail and buried him in Aurora, sort of. Anyway, I asked this tinsmith about this, and he said, well, Willie had to go in the ground. You just couldn't keep carrying Willie all over the place. So Willie went in the ground, And Kyle comes to Portland. Well, he's a doctor and a tailor, so you can get work doing that. And he meets John Walker Grimm coming up from the valley with some of his apples. His orchards are now producing, and he's selling these apples in San Francisco. 40 bushels for $2,500 was basically and that's a lot of money, okay, in those days. He's literally asks him, where did you get those apples? And he directs him to the site down near Clackamas and then right here at Marion at Aurora, which he names after his daughter. And he buys the mills. They had been invested in by these early guys that went to California and came back and invested in those mills. So he buys the mills, and all of a sudden now he's running the show as far as economics go in that part of the valley. Well, okay, that's all fine and interesting. Then for me, it's 1996, and I've decided to move on from Aurora, and I'm hired as the executive director of the Clackamas County Historical Society, where I learn a really quick lesson about tourism and money for projects from the Tourism Development Council, which Thelma will attest to. We had a lovely meeting after we were turned down for one application. Well, they were especially focused on the end of the Oregon Trail, which makes perfect sense, if you're not working for the the Clackamas County Historical Society Museum. I don't want to jump the gun on this one. So, it's Oregon City, as I learned by studying the newspapers from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, really didn't even bring up the idea of the Oregon Trail at all, or very rarely, until the late 70s and early 80s. Before that, it was all about the territory. Oregon City was the capital of the territory, the first city of the West, and that's what they said, territorial days. I said, well, geez, why don't we get together, and Mr. Kenan remembers this, of course, getting together and talking about why don't we rename this museum to the Museum of the Oregon Territory? Oh, and now we can go to, can say that, Clackamas in 1843 went all the way to the Rocky Mountains and north to near Alaska, and I can call up my colleagues in Spokane and say, oh, by the way, I'm your new boss. It's only a joke, of course. Anyway, the county thinks it's such a good idea, and I'm not going to take full credit for this, but I will take some. They think it's such a good idea that they rename their Clackamas to the Mount Hood Territory. Oh, okay, there we go. At the museum, then, we developed specific exhibits, the Road of 1,000 Wonders, which is about the railroad, because that was their advertising slogan as they went through the area. And then the businesses, a lot of the businesses along the new Pacific Highway adopted that theme and started doing that. So I thought, let's do exhibits along that way. The importance of Willamette Falls. I mean, once we finished the third floor, with help from the Tourism Development Commission, by the way, and now you could get up there and look out and see the falls very dramatically, and stand there and look at it and just marvel at everything. We decided we do an exhibit on the Indians of the Willamette and their role at the Willamette Falls. So we had very interesting conversations with the Grand Ronde elders. They said to me, those Celilo fellows get all of the credit, but we were fishing here too. And this is a very important spiritual site for the Indians in the western part of the area. My biggest issue with working with the Indian group was, how do I, in an exhibit, interpret their myths and legends? And the elder was very frank, and he just simply said, Mr. Harris, you just call it the truth. Oh, okay, that's a good idea. And that's what we did for that exhibit. And so as the settlers came, and I'm just about done here because, I know you got other things to do. I remember this, I came across various neat little reminiscences from some of these pioneers. One of them is from Willard Reese in 1846. He writes a letter from Oregon to his mother, Elizabeth, who's living in the Midwest. And he writes, the only objection I have to this country is that too much rain falls in the winter season. However, they are warm and not injurious to stock. And the grass is as good here in January as in July, and our farmers sow wheat from October to June. Benjamin Franklin Bonney had another interesting reminiscence. This is all as a result of having those meetings in 1874 and after with the reunions where they're getting together and actually talking to each other about their memories. Because they said we had to get together. All of this was going to be lost if we didn't start writing it down. Ben, he remembered that when I tell my grandchildren about the old days, about the plains being dark with vast herds of buffalo, about the Indians and the mining camps, they look at me as if I could not be telling the truth. And isn't that that is the truth in so many ways. So I think I'll leave it at that. Okay, is that okay? You want me to keep going? Okay, all right, yeah, all right. The longer version can be heard elsewhere. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. So I think you took one of my cheat sheets here, maybe? You probably did. I can't survive without my cheat sheet, so. All right. Well, so what we're going to do next is we're going to invite some of our former county commissioners up, and each one is going to be given a moment to talk about their greatest accomplishment as a county commissioner. And so what I'll do is I'll call you up one at a time, and please each come up to the podium, share your key accomplishment, and then have you return to your seat. And I'm going to start with Ralph Groaner from 1977 to 1984. Ralph?
Thank you. I thought about this and I said, my God, do I do the one issue I cared so much about, senior centers. And it occurred to me that we got block grants while I was commissioner. I went to all the cities in the county folks and said, can we have all the money to build senior centers? And I'll be God, they said yes. But I was also proud of our urban renewal district that has created millions of dollars. We created that. And probably I'll end with this. The one I had the most fun at was Neil Goldschmidt was one of my, we drank beer after every CRAG meeting, so I got to know him pretty intimately. But Neil voted no on the Mount Hood Freeway, and Ed Lindquist, who's here, had worked his fanny off on Ways and Means to get the funding for what we call the Oregon City Bypass. And Ed says, Ralph, it's your job. I was county rep on CRAG, Columbia Region Association of Government. It wasn't like today, not like Metro. All the cities, counties. So I started working a year or so in advance on each member, going to them and buying them lunch. Fortunately, the county paid for those lunches. I wasn't wealthy, but no. I told them Neil was going to vote against us. You may not understand, in those days it was a weighted vote. Portland controlled, one person could control. The only way you could win was to get every other city, county to vote. Folks, we did it. We matched Ed's money, and that's the Oregon City Bypass. That's the one I'm proudest of. Thank you. Yeah.
Of course, Ralph, nowadays, if you want to get lunch or any kind of meal, you got to have a county procurement card. So, okay. So next, I'm going to invite Ed Lindquist, who was here from 1985 to 1998. So come on up, Ed.
Well, it's a hard act to follow as Ralph, but I'm going to talk about some things we did when I came in as a commissioner. The other two commissioners asked me to run for Ralph's seat because he wasn't running again, and so I ran for that, and 6 months into it, the other two commissioners were fighting all the time, and I said, this is not what I came here for. So I said, I'm going to resign and leave unless you're willing to sit down with a business consultant and look at how the county is run. And so they said, sure, we'll do that. So we did that, and we decided to hire a county manager. Well, not this one, but led to this. And so it took the commissioners out of day-to-day policy of the county government and said, we're policymakers overall, but we're not going to run every agency on the day-to-day basis, which was impossible. And so that was the beginning. I don't see Mike Swanson here, but Mike was the first county manager. He didn't make it? Okay. So that was a major change in how the county ran. And from that point on, it became more of an effort to try to work together, get the commissioners to work together. Bob Schumacher left and went to work for Neil Goldschmidt, and so we had a chance then to appoint a commissioner. And we decided it was time in the history of this county to have a woman county commissioner. And so we appointed Darlene Huli as the third new commissioner, the first. So these are changes in evolution of the county. And we began to work together as a team. And that, yes, the bypass was certainly one of the things. All the highways and stuff around the town center were all put together through tax increment financing, and the county had a plan then for how to develop the county in the urban area. And we followed that, and we did that, and it was a great time, and I decided it was so good I stayed 14 years.
I like that accomplishment, establishing a county manager. I'm with you there. So also appointing Darlene too, who just happens to be next on our list. So I'm going to invite Darlene Huli up. She was the first woman commissioner from 1987 to 1996. Come on up, Darlene.
Thank you. I had the privilege of serving on 4 levels of government, and being a county commissioner was my favorite. I had a great group to work with. We actually agreed on most things, and if we didn't agree, we figured out a way to still get to the same place. So it was a fun place for me to work, and I had with Ed and with Dale and with Judy, it was just sort of a dream job. I've never had a group that's worked together better than this group worked together. And so it was, you know, whatever somebody came up with, we would have a long discussion about it and then say, you know, this is a really bad idea, or this is a great idea. And so it was a place that you could actually get something accomplished. You could pass a bill, and you had colleagues that were willing to work together. And I know when Judy and Ed and I were there, we all made decisions differently, but it was amazing how many times those decisions were the same as the other person made. So it was really my best time in serving from any government group was the time at County Commissioner. And Ed, thank you for being part of that. There were a lot of things that we did that I think were very innovative. We made sure that we really were operating like a business and not as separate entities. When it came time to look at how do we pay for our rural parts of our county for our parks, we came together and decided there was somebody building a golf course and they were giving it up. We said, why don't we why don't we do it? And why don't we derive the money from there? That's kept our parks going. When I came here, there was not a single park in the eastern part of the county. And again, we worked together, put together a park district, which has a water facility. And again, so that the people in that area have some place to go as a park. But the thing that was, for me, the most important was whether it was a little issue or a big issue, the three of us worked together and made it happen. Thank you.
Okay, so next on my list is Bill Kennemer, and he served from 1997 to 2008. Come on up, Bill.
This feels a little bit like home, doesn't it? It's been a while. I had 12 great years here, and it's nice to see you started out with Ed, and it was a good experience. And I guess a couple of things as I think about it is that my second session was the beginning of a time that was very special to me. Served with Larry Soa, who's here today, and Michael Jordan, and then Martha came in. And there were three highlights during that time, in my view. One was that we had a bunch of people who felt like they weren't being heard out in the outer communities. And we started a program called Complete Communities. And it brought a lot of voice to a lot of people. Second thing is that we had a lot of different governmental entities and others that felt like they weren't at the table. And we started the Clackamas County Coordinating Council. And that made a huge difference and brought our county together in a wonderful and unified way. And finally, I think one of the highlights was we had a lot of inefficiency with our system because we had a large number of employees scattered throughout our very large county. And if you, for example, if you had a really difficult building permit, you might literally have to drive to 7 locations. Drive to 7 locations to get a permit. And so we worked together and we brought people together to make it more efficient. And this building and the adjacent one on red soils are an example of that. It was an honor to serve, and what a great county we have. Thank you.
So next on my list is an individual that I understand is the smart commissioner because he didn't necessarily like to talk too much. But I will introduce him and invite Larry Soa up if you would like to say a few words. But if not, Larry, why don't you stand up and say hello to everybody? So, great. Thank you, Larry. And Larry served from 1999 through 2006. Okay, well, I have next on my list the council president-elect for Metro, Lynn Peterson, who served from 2007 to 2011.
You know, what a great group. I mean, Clackamas County is so special, and I think that's why we all served. And I just want to quote Tom McCall because I think it is more appropriate at this moment than anything else. And seeing all of you out in the audience, this is a team. Whether you're on council, the commission now, or have prior served, there is a team in the back here of citizens and staff. And Tom McCall said that heroes are not giant statues framed against a red sky. They are people who say, this is my community, and it's my responsibility to make it better. That is you. That is this entire group in front and all the way to the back. It is a very deep, deep citizenry and engagement, and I think that former Commissioner Bill Kenan and legislator just said it very nicely with all of the engagement. The thing that I would say I'm most proud of is working with the commission we had at the time to go to 5 people and getting that done and moving on and starting to get more engagement just at the elected official level. And we've now got an amazing group of 5 commissioners. And, you know, some of the smaller things, we're like avoiding a moratorium on sewer and development in the county. Something I did not expect to be dealing with when I came in, but we got through that. And probably finalizing the first phase of the Sunrise and opening, or at least signing the contract for the future opening of the Orange Line. So I would probably stop at that. But a lot of infrastructure investment that was started before me, and we were able to keep going with. So thank you.
Okay, so last but not least, I want to invite Commissioner Tootie Smith, who served from 2013 to 2016, to come on up and share a few words.
when one considers a job a county commissioner, you know how multifaceted it is. So to just identify possibly one or two accomplishments, it's very hard because, like Lynn said, it is a team effort. For me, when we started talking about the development of the Willamette Falls locks and the property down the Blue Heron Mill, we were able as a commission to be able to have 4 government agencies come together: the State of Oregon Legislature, the County Commission, the City of Oregon City, and yes, the federal government come together and agree on the project down there. And that is, I believe, a model to showing how all government entities and differences of opinion can work together. My second accomplishment, it's really not accomplishment in itself, but it's something that I miss, and that's working with the constituents. I was able to have many constituents come into my office and work on the problems that they saw where government might have been in their way, to work on with our different agencies to solve those. And I felt that I was able to give a voice to a lot of those people in the community who felt they didn't have a voice. And so I would just wish for the county, the city commissioners to continue to do that and always listen to your people and let them guide your hearts. Thank you very much.
Before we move on, I did want to take a quick moment to, where we talked about county managers. One of my predecessors is here today, and just wanted to introduce Steve Rhodes, the Clackamas County Administrator from 1995 to 2001. Steve? So, and Steve, I don't know if you heard the word, but you know I'm retiring at the end of January, and we just opened up the recruitment for my position. So if you wanted to put in for it, give me a holler. So, okay, so we were waiting on Dr. John McLaughlin. Have we heard? Okay, so I heard this awful story that as he was riding his horse across the county, he encountered a washout on one of the trails, and I think I understand he's not going to be able to make it here today. So we'll have to invite him back when he's able to recover from that and get here back into town on that, and maybe we'll have him come join us for the time capsule event. So my regrets on that, John. I hope you're okay out there. So good. So next, I have got the 5 current county commissioners to come on up and talk about their proudest accomplishments. And we're going to start with the chair, Jim Bernard.
Bill, that was less than 45 minutes, your speech. You know, when I first got involved in politics, the person who was my mentor was Mike Swanson, the first manager of Clackamas County. He was when I became the mayor, he was my mentor. He taught me about budgets, and I'm sure he taught you a lot about budgets too. But when I think back of some of the accomplishment, and one of these is a little dicey yet, is the Mount Hood Exchange, which is actually on the desk for the president to sign. He just needs a pen. But one of the things that was really important is back in the days when I was the mayor and we were fighting over sewers, we now have a district, West. We've solved that problem. The other is Stafford. Stafford, we now have an IGA with 3 cities, and the community, and ourselves, and Metro, and that is behind us. There's still a lot of work to be done on that. But really, first thing, I have some things I'd like to have done, and I know you guys have all heard about this, a courthouse. I think that our district attorney said that he came here, they talked about a courthouse. They've been talking about it a long time, but we're going to get it done. By 2020, we will have it, I believe, we'll be shoveling dirt and building a new courthouse right over here. So it's the future. And finally, I really like the Oregon County, and I would like to go back to the way we were and get up into Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next, I'd like to invite Commissioner Sonya Fischer to come on up.
What a wonderful room. I want to reiterate what President-elect Lynn Peterson said about the wonder of the team, because it truly is a team. And my most proudest accomplishment is working with our current commissioners and creating the team that we currently have. Out of that effort, I'm proud to say that we are doing everything we can to protect and promote quality of life in Clackamas County. And as we all feel our hearts and we're looking at our history and we look at our future, we know that there is no greater calling for all of us to protect what we have and make sure that not only do our seniors have a place to retire, but our young people have a place to call home. So we're working really hard on that. Part of that effort, an effort that I think we're all very proud of, is our initiative to combat climate change. Last year, we reaffirmed the county's goal in this effort. Just last week, all of our commission is supporting an effort not only to combat climate change within our county operations, but community-wide. So we are taking the initiative, we are being bold as leaders of this county, and we are doing our part to combat climate change. Really the hope, and we're thinking about this time capsule and for 50 years, is that in 50 years when that time capsule is opened, the people, the generations ahead of us can look back and say, yes, 50 years ago, we did our part to do what was most important. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Commissioner Ken Humberston to come on up.
First thing I'd like to mention, and I think this is something that should be pointed out, you've heard consistently from everybody in this room that has been here at the podium, is there's no I involved in any of this. This is a we process. Everybody working together is how things get done. So just on a couple of issues, we, as Commissioner Bernard pointed out, working together with our 3 cities and the community of Stafford, we were able to resolve the urban reserves. That took 31 separate individual elected officials to come to agreement. It took 5.5 months, but it resolved something that had been going on for many, many years. Government that doesn't work together doesn't work, and that's what we always need to do. In terms of a personal note of something that I'm enjoying working on, I'm sure you've heard my initials are CLT, not KAH. The CLT project, cross-laminated timber, is one that I'm looking forward to working with our communities on. If we're lucky and we work hard at this, we will reinvigorate some of the timber industry here in Clackamas County and provide new jobs, family wage jobs for our rural communities. And I think that that is probably one of the most important things we can possibly do. Thank you.
Next, Commissioner Paul Savas, come on up.
Well, there's a theme here today, and I'm going to touch on that. When Mary approached me about today, how we're going to do this, and talked about that, I thought about it long and hard, and I decided to actually forego what I thought was my proudest accomplishment and really talk about what we've all done here together. So, a short story, talk about sewer here today. One of my first assignments as a commissioner, even though that's not why I ran, was to try to work on that 25-year dispute on sewer. And in doing so, I decided to research, and a lot of you know I probably read, and I read years of documents. And I saw signatures of a lot of names of people in this room on documents as far as, making a decision for the sewer district one way or another. Long story short, it came to mind here, and it reminds me of even in high school, I was on the track team, and I ran the 440 relay, the mile relay, and the 440. And I really got the most amount of pleasure out of the relays. And I really think that as a commissioner and government officials, we are really a relay. This is really a relay. We just pass the baton on from one commissioner or one commission to another. So when I talk about what I want to talk about, because it is really the beginning of why I ran, and really I think really actually came from a lot of you in the room, and that is the Sunrise Corridor. The Sunrise Corridor, we accomplished phase one, and that was one of my first assignments, was to keep those dollars in Clackamas County, because we were kind of threatened at the time that maybe those dollars would go away to another county due to difficulties with the local businesses and so forth. So I really think that that was an accomplishment, but is not, again, I just had maybe the tail end of the baton. I want to just give credit to a lot of the folks out over here today. And really, it is also the future. It's also the future, not about a road, but really about communities, about homes. It's about housing. It's about another community, another phase of Clackamas County to be built. And I really think that really holds a lot of future in for Clackamas County and its citizens and our economy. So I just want to thank everyone here today. It is really about team. And again, I thought it's really important to just realize for all of us that a lot of where we're standing today is a lot of the work that was done by people here, our staff and commissioners in the past. So I want to thank you all.
Thank you, Paul. For a moment, I thought you were going to talk about the digester down at the Tri-City plant and share the fact that we're going to build it out of cross-laminated timber. So, next, I would like to invite Commissioner Martha Schrader up. And Martha served from 2004 to 2009, and then from 2013 to the present. So come on up.
If someone had told me when I first moved to Clackamas County back in 1979 that I would be up here as a county commissioner, I wouldn't have believed it. And I did start out early in the county because I started out with libraries. And I want to thank Darlene and Ed and Judy for appointing me to the Clackamas County Library Commission. So I kept doing that kind of work. And as a young mother, it kept me going because I knew that access to information, free access, is the bedrock of democracy. And that is essentially what got me started. But I'm not here to talk about me. I'd like to say something about my colleagues here that are in the audience. I first started with Bill and Larry, and I drove you up the wall on more than one occasion. I remember. In a very positive way. But I have to tell you, I want to thank Larry and Bill for teaching me as a young commissioner who really was new to the process. Everything I knew today, and I remember complete communities. I remember the old building in downtown Oregon City where you walk on the floor sometimes, it'd be spongy, okay? I remember being so excited when this building was finally coming to fruition, and finally when we actually have a development services building. And I will echo Bill in saying that was one of our key accomplishments back then, was to really professionalize and centralize the services that we have and we provide as a county. But I also want to thank Mr. Groaner back there, because he also taught me everything I knew. I see Ginny in the audience. I see Ed and Sandy. I see Penny. I see Lynn. I see Darlene Huli. I see Steve. I see my friend Tootie. And I wanted to let Darlene know something very special, and that is the staff keeps wanting me to change my furniture. And I always refuse because it's the original furniture you had when you were the first woman commissioner here in Clackamas County, and I'm like, I don't want to change the furniture. I want a plaque on that furniture, Mary. We still have to do that. And I also want to mention somebody very special to me here today, too, and that is Mary Rathke, who recently got an award from our Chamber of Commerce, our North Clackamas Chamber, as the Public Servant of the Year. Well deserved, Mary. Well, don't sit down yet, because I know that Mayor Norris is here with Dr. Norris, who was our family physician, and Mayor Norris just got a Lifetime Achievement Award from the same group, so let's give a hand to Mayor Norris. Woo! So I see a lot of people here. I can't even begin to thank you all, but some of our accomplishments, I think for me, the key thing was veterans issues, because when I was here back in 2003, 4, 5, you know, we were in a number of international conflicts. And what I found out was, oh, and I have to mention, Tootie, I am going to mention you, so don't worry about that, okay? You're coming next. But the accomplishment was that we weren't really paying attention to these young soldiers who were women, men and women who were in these conflict zones. They'd come back, and 3 days later, they'd been on the street. It was a huge, huge problem. And so we teamed up with Camp Withicum, and we started to pull together a strategy of what it would mean to make sure our returning veterans from war zones got what they needed. And because of that work, the governor at the time, Governor Kulinagowski, appointed me to his task force on veterans. And that was the time when actually we developed the largest body of pro-veteran legislation in the state of Oregon. We hadn't talked about it before. We talked about what did they need when they have to go home, what were mental health services, what are housing needs, what are the problems with post-traumatic stress disorder, things that we had never had a conversation about before. And because of that, it's one of the reasons I did take a 2-year hiatus to the state Senate, where I was chair of the Veterans Services Committee. And I'm proud to say today, because of the work that we started in Clackamas County, it was Clackamas County. We were the ones, truly, that brought this issue to the forefront. And now I know the whole state is on board. But it started here, front and center, in Clackamas County because of our work and our coalition building with Camp Withicum, and for that I am absolutely so grateful. I was chair of the Veterans Services Committee for 2 years, and those committees are still working today. President Courtney promised me that when I wasn't going to be back in the Senate, that they would continue that work, and he has kept his word, and Clackamas County still remains a leader, because with my 5 colleagues, we've just built transitional housing, 15 pods, soon to be 30 pods, for our veterans here to get them off the street, get them in transitional housing, and get them on a pathway to permanent housing, and we're not going to stop with that. The next thing I'm really proud about, and I want to mention Commissioner Smith. Both she and I have a great interest in history, a great interest in economic development, a great interest in the possibilities of a heritage area, which Mayor Norris has worked on so diligently. And so we worked together, and you took the lead on unlocking the locks, okay? And also the Falls Legacy Project. I'm still working on that with Commissioner Savas. And I want to thank you for that, Commissioner. It was a joy to work with you. It really was a wonderful time, and I'm here to assure you today we tag team that, but we are coming so close to getting that disposition study where the Corps of Engineers is going to go ahead and release the locks. And it's because of your work. Hopefully now it's because of my continuing work on those 2 committees, because heritage and history is who we are. Remember, we are important because we are the end of the Oregon Trail County, and I always remind all my Association of Oregon County colleagues that that would be us. They get a little snarky sometimes. I said, nope, we are the end of the Oregon Trail County. It is amazing, and I'm so privileged to be here with such an august group of people, and to have such a wonderful team, current team to work with, Paul, Ken, Sonya, and Jimbo. Okay. Thank you for being good colleagues, and thank you for supporting me and all of us in the good work that we do. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So I would also like to acknowledge some of our other county elected officials who are here in attendance. We have Judge Karen Brisbane here. Karen? We have our county clerk, Sherry Hall. We have Mr. District Attorney John Foote. And we have our county assessor, Tammy Little. make sure if there's anyone I missed. Nope, I got everybody. Thank you all for being here. Before we wrap it up and get to munch out, I'm going to turn things over to Mary Rathke for a special unveiling. And so most of you know that Mary serves as the clerk to the Board of County Commissioners, and we wouldn't be able to have a county government were it not for Mary. Yeah. And again, a grateful appreciation from the North Clackamas Chamber of Commerce as the Public Servant of the Year. So, Mary?
Thank you, Don. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited. I'm kind of giddy with all you people all here, all my favorite commissioners in one room. So, but I did want to mention some who couldn't be here. And Judy Hemmerstead was scheduled to be here, but she couldn't. She fell and broke her hip. So let's pray for her for a speedy recovery. And these folks had prior commitments: Michael Jordan, Bob Austin, Ann Leininger, Charlotte Lehan, Jamie Damon, and John Ludlow. So they couldn't make it here. And also, Don already mentioned, but I wanted to acknowledge Steve Rhodes, who was our county administrator. He flew in from California to be here, and I'm so happy he's here. Penny Morrison, who was clerk to the board before me. I've learned so much from her. I'm so glad she's here. Sherry McGinnis was a staff assistant in our office. Jenny Van Loo, I'm glad you're here. Alice is here. She worked in our office for a while. Sandy worked for the courts. So, oh, and Thelma, I love your outfit. I wanted to say that. So we're going to unveil the wall hanging. So go ahead, guys. So back in 2014, Commissioner Jim Bernard came up with the idea of some kind of display naming the Clackamas County Commissioners. Well, a little late, because that was back in 2014. Here are the names of the Clackamas County Commissioners from 1877 to present. So there's 58 names up there. The design and creation of this hanging is from Rick, from Facilities Rick Buffton. All his idea. He took the lead on the project with the help of Dan Hopkins, who's standing there with him, and also other members of the facility staff. So we're really proud that they put this beautiful wall hanging together for us. I also want to thank Kevin Moss, who's up there. He helped with the research to locate the names and the terms of the past commissioners. We took a trip to Salem, to the state archives and the state library, and went through tons and tons of Oregon Blue Books to get these names. And then we spent a few days down at our recording office going through commissioner journals, which was pretty exciting. That was fun. Took a long time, though. So this beautiful wall hanging displays the names of the dedicated people who have committed their time and energy serving Clackamas County. It represents the past, present, and future of our Board of County Commissioners, and it will be displayed proudly in this room for future generations. So that's all.
Thank you, Mary. Of course, what's next is the big plaque for all the county administrators. What I want to do now is to conclude our ceremonies. You are welcome to enjoy a snack, some punch, some cake, and mingle. For those of you, our commissioners, former and present, who are here, I would invite you, as after the cameras come off, to come on up. We want to take some photographs of you all together. So thank you so much. Take care now.